The house at the end of the gravel road looks abandoned. Bare plywood walls, a porch with no railing, one window covered in plastic that snaps in the wind. The county valued it at $400. Her brothers laughed.
Where were you
when
on
they
the evening of
signed
the
deed
15th?
over.
We have
But
reason to
move
believe your previous
closer,
statement was
past the
incomplete.
weeds,
I was at home.
past the rust
I
on
already
the
told
front
you that.
gate, up onto the porch boards that hold under your weight like a promise. The door opens without a sound because someone has oiled the hinges recently. Inside, timber framing that has not been built this way in 100 years.
Don't
A stone
do this.
fireplace
If you walk
anchored
out
by
that door,
hand.
it's over.
Oak shelves fitted with dovetails so tight no daylight slips between them. And on a desk upstairs, a leather journal, red cover, open to a single line of pencil. A house is not wood and nails. A house is a promise. Down a hidden staircase, a locked drawer, a folder thick enough to put a man in prison, and the girl standing in the dust, just beginning to understand what her father has left her. 11 months I fed my dying father with a spoon. My brothers came twice, then they took everything he owned and left me a piece of land worth $400. They laughed when they signed it over. They had no idea what was hidden inside. The soup was warm, not hot. Conrad couldn't swallow hot anymore. Linnea held the spoon at the angle her father had taught her years ago, for framing a corner, not for feeding a man. September, late light through the kitchen window, the same window that had watched her grow from a child on a stool into a girl who knew what a load-bearing wall sounded like when you tapped it. Except now her father was the thing that could not bear its own weight. He opened his mouth. She tipped the spoon. He swallowed, slow, like the swallow itself took planning. "Good," she said. "It is good." She did not believe him. The soup was a can, plus water, plus salt, because she had not slept enough last night to make broth from bones, and because Conrad had stopped tasting things in July anyway. She fed him another spoonful. The clock on the wall ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and then stopped. "Tell me about a job," he said. She knew which jobs. She had been telling him stories from her own childhood for 3 weeks now. About the time he let her hold the chalk line. About the basement in the Mercer house, where the foundation was crooked, and he showed her how to read a crack in concrete the way a doctor reads an X-ray. "The Mercer basement," she said. "You were 8. I was 9. 9, he said. "Yes." His eyes closed, then opened again, slower this time. She kept the spoon moving. Soup. Pause. Soup. Pause. The way he had taught her to set a row of bricks. Not fast, not slow, even. Linnea. "Yes. Get my toolbox." She set the bowl down on the side table beside his glasses. The toolbox was in the hallway closet where it had lived since the day the doctor said hospice. She brought it back, set it on his lap. He did not have the strength to open it, so she opened it for him. The Stanley, yellow, worn smooth from 40 years of his thumb on the lock button. He lifted his hand, just his fingers. He could not move his arm anymore, but he could move his fingers if she put the thing in them. She put the tape measure in his hand. He closed his fingers around it. Then he opened them again and pressed it into her palm. "Measure twice," he said. She nodded, because she could not speak. "Cut once." "I know, Daddy. You will know when." That was the last full sentence Conrad Hatchwell said to her. 3 days later he was gone. She was holding his hand. The morning light was coming through the same window. Outside, the same dog was barking. And inside, in a kitchen that smelled like canned soup and antiseptic, a 20-year-old girl learned the exact second her father stopped being her father and started being a body. She did not cry. She would cry later. She closed his eyes the way the hospice nurse had shown her 2 weeks before. She kissed his forehead. She walked to the phone. She called the funeral home. She made the coffee. She sat in the kitchen with both hands wrapped around the mug, and she waited for the world to come back inside the house. It did, by the carload. The funeral was on a Tuesday in October. The rain had started the night before and had not stopped. First Methodist filled by 10 in the morning. 300 people, farmers in their cleanest jeans, business owners in their second-best suits. The woman from the post office, who Conrad had once fixed a porch railing for at no charge. The hardware store man Erlon Rakestraw, who had known her father since before she was born. The whole town poured itself into a building it had not all fit inside since the Easter service 2 years before, and Linnea stood at the back. She wore a black dress Hollis Brockway had lent her. She had never met Hollis Brockway. The dress had arrived by courier the day before, with a note. The note said simply, "You will need this. I knew your father. I lived next to the old Mill Road property." The sleeves were too long. She kept tugging them, in her right hand. The Stanley. She did not know why she had brought it, except that her father had pressed it into her palm, and it felt wrong to leave the house without it. Lucian sat in the front pew, charcoal suit, silver tie, shoes that had never seen a job site. He worked the church the way he worked the office, shaking hands before the service, nodding gravely, accepting condolences without offering anything back. Marshall sat 2 seats over, his wife Coralie beside him, their daughter Marigold on his lap. Marigold was 5. Her tongue stuck out of the corner of her mouth because she was concentrating on not fidgeting. Marshall kept his eyes on the floor. The pastor talked about Conrad, about the buildings, about the way he ran a tight site and never shortchanged a client. Linnea listened, but she also did not listen because she was doing math. She was thinking about the last 11 months. 11 months of feeding her father, bathing him, reading the paper out loud when his headaches got too bad for the television, sleeping on a cot beside his bed in the front room of the house she had grown up in. 11 months of canceling her own appointments because his were so many, of dropping out of school halfway through the semester because somebody had to. And in those 11 months, Lucian had called. Once a month. The calls were never longer than 4 minutes. She knew because she had started timing them at month 3. Marshall had visited. Once, on Conrad's birthday in June, he had stayed 2 hours. She had not realized she was keeping count until right now, right here, in a borrowed dress, in a pew at the back of First Methodist, listening to a pastor describe her father as a man who never cut a corner, because the men in the front row had cut every corner there was to cut, and nobody knew yet, except her. The service ended. The line started. People shuffled past the casket, then past the family, then out into the rain. Lucian found her in the empty church when it was over. He did not pause. He did not ask if she was all right. He did not put a hand on her shoulder. He said, "We need to talk about the business." She looked at him. He looked at his phone. "Not now," she said. "When?" "After we bury him, Lucian." "That is what I mean. After the burial. Tomorrow. The lawyer's office at 10. "Okay." He nodded once, walked out, took an umbrella from the deacon at the door, did not offer to share it. She stood alone in the church for a long time, the Stanley in her hand, the dress too long in the sleeves, and outside the rain kept coming. The next 3 days were the worst kind of quiet she had ever known. She stayed in her father's house because she had nowhere else to go. His reading glasses sat on the end table beside his chair. His boots were by the back door, laces loose. She did not move them. She made tea in the kitchen where she had fed him his last meal, sat with both hands around the mug, listening to the house settle, listening to the radiator click, listening for sounds that would not come anymore. Lucian called twice on Wednesday, once on Thursday, each time about the will reading. Each time he sounded like a man trying not to sound impatient. The will reading was Friday morning, Cyrus Paget's office. Paget was a thin, careful man who had handled Conrad's affairs for 15 years. He had Conrad's same way of choosing words, slow, considered. He read everything out loud the way Conrad would have read a blueprint. Hatchwell Construction. The company. Divided equally, 3 ways. The house on Linden. The childhood house. Divided equally, 3 ways. The savings. Divided equally, 3 ways. The truck, the tools, the 2 work vehicles in the company lot. Divided equally, 3 ways. Lucian was already nodding before Paget got to the second item. Marshall was looking at the table. Linnea sat across from both of them. She did not move. She did not speak. Equal. The word kept sounding wrong in her head, like a saw blade hitting a nail. She had given up school. She had given up 11 months of her life. She had sat beside the cot at 3 in the morning and held an emesis basin while her father vomited bile because the chemo had stopped working. She had washed sheets at 5 a.m. because there was nobody else to wash them, and the will said equal. She did not blame her father for it. He had written the will 5 years before any of this, before he was sick, back when he still thought his 3 children would all behave like his 3 children. Paget kept reading. The property at Old Mill Road, parcel 1147, 3.2 acres, improved with a single-family residential structure, unfinished, is left solely to my daughter, Linnea Hatchwell. Lucian's head came up. What property? It is described in detail in the addendum, Paget said. 3 acres of what? Paget told him. 40 minutes outside of town, end of a county road, purchased at tax auction 8 years ago. How much did Dad pay? $400. Lucian almost smiled. He looked at Linnea. His face showed her nothing. Not malice, not pity, not even acknowledgement. She did not register. She was a footnote. Keep it, he said. Marshall glanced up at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Quick. Gone before she could read it. He looked away. Paget straightened the papers on his desk. There is one more item. He reached into the lower drawer of the desk, brought out an envelope, cream-colored, heavy paper, sealed with red wax, a circle of wax the size of a quarter, pressed with what looked like the head of a framing nail. Linnea recognized the seal. Conrad had done it once when she was 12. To impress her, he had heated the wax with a lighter and pressed his nail head into it and laughed when she said it looked like a tiny crater on the moon. What is that? Lucian said. It is for Linnea. What is in it? I do not know. Open it. I will not. Lucian's voice got sharper. Open it. We are all family here. Whatever is in it concerns all of us. Paget looked at Lucian over the top of his reading glasses. Then he looked at the envelope, then back at Lucian. Your father was very specific. The envelope is for Linnea. It is not to be opened until 30 days have passed since the date of his death. Those were his instructions, witnessed, notarized, in writing. 30 days, why 30 days? He did not say. Paget held the envelope out across the desk. He held it out to Linnea, not to Lucian. She took it. Her thumb pressed against the wax. The wax was hard, cold, slightly waxy, where the warmth of her hands started to soften the edge. She put the envelope in her purse. Lucien watched her do it. "Sign the papers," he said. She signed. What happened next took 11 days. On Monday, Lucien brought in his own attorney, a man named Tristan Vance. Vance spoke in a voice that made everything sound already decided, like all the work had been done in another room, and they were just here to confirm. The argument was simple. Linnea had never been a formal employee of Hatchwell Construction. No pay stubs, no contract, no title. Her ownership interest in the business was, in Vance's exact phrasing, functionally non-existent. She took care of Dad, Marshall said. It was the only time he pushed back. He said it once, quietly, almost like he was hoping nobody would hear. Lucien did not look at him. "That is not a business position," Vance said. Linnea called 2 attorneys in the county that night. The first said she would need $15,000 as a retainer. The second said the same and added that she would probably not win. Conrad had never written her into the company as a partner. She might have a moral argument. She did not have a legal one. She tried to fight anyway, without lawyers, because that was all she had. She sat in the kitchen of the house she had grown up in, across from her oldest brother, and she said, "He would not have wanted this." Lucien leaned against the counter, arms crossed, expression flat. "He left a will, Linnea. He left it 5 years ago, before I gave up school, before I gave up everything. Nobody asked you to give up anything." She stopped. She actually stopped breathing for half a second because the sentence was so cleanly wrong, so precisely the opposite of true. "He needed me." "There are nurses, Linnea. There are facilities." He did not want a facility. That was his choice. It was not your debt to pay. She stared at him. She did not know what to say, because nothing she could say would land, because Lucien had decided what the truth was, and no version of the truth she could offer was going to change that. "You are 20 years old," he said. "You do not know how any of this works. Dad left you a piece of land. Be grateful." He walked out. Marshall called her that evening. She could hear Marigold in the background, singing some tuneless little song about a frog, the way only a 5-year-old can. "I know this is not right," he said. "Then say something." Silence on the line. "You could say no, Marshall. He has the lawyers, Linnea. I do not know what I can do." You could say no. That is what you could do. More silence. "I have a family," he said quietly. "I cannot go to war with my own brother." "Neither can I," she said. "That is the difference. You chose not to. I never had the choice." She hung up. He did not call back. She did not sleep that night. She sat in her father's chair in the front room, the reading glasses still on the end table, the blanket still draped over the armrest. She did not cry. She kept thinking she would, but the tears would not come. There was something else inside her where the tears should be, something that did not have a name yet. The phone rang at 10:04. She almost did not answer because it was probably Lucien calling to lecture her about being grateful again. But the screen said Coralie, Marshall's wife. Linnea had spoken to Coralie maybe 6 times in 5 years of marriage, polite at Thanksgiving, polite at birthdays, never anything past polite. She answered, "Linnea, Coralie, I am sorry to call so late." "It is fine." A pause. Linnea could hear the sound of a tap running in the background. Then it stopped. "I want to say something," Coralie said, "and I do not want you to interrupt, because if you interrupt, I will lose my nerve." "Okay, I am sorry. I cannot do anything, not because I do not want to, because I cannot. Marshall has decided what Marshall has decided, and I have a 5-year-old, and I have a mortgage, and I cannot. Do you understand? Yes. But I want you to know that I have not forgotten what you did for your father. None of us came. None of us. I did not even bring you a casserole. I did not even bring you a card. And I am ashamed of myself. Every single day I am ashamed of myself. Linnea did not answer. She could not. Her throat had closed. I am not asking you to forgive me, Coralie said. I am just asking you to remember that I said this. Will you remember? Yes. Thank you, Coralie. Yes. Good night. Good night, Linnea. The call lasted 90 seconds. Linnea did not cry on the phone. She cried in her car. Half an hour later, parked at a gas station 3 blocks from the house, forehead against the steering wheel, hands shaking on her knees, the first cry since the funeral. She drove home after. She did not feel better, but she felt less alone, which was almost the same thing. The childhood house sold in 9 days. Lucian priced it fast, below value, to move it quick. A young couple from out of state took it. They were expecting a baby. Linnea heard them through the realtor talking about the nursery, about the backyard, about what they called the character of the place. She stood across the street the morning the movers came. She watched strangers carry her father's furniture out the front door he had hung by hand 20 years ago. They would sand his floors. They would paint over the trim. He had carved that trim himself. He used to call those built-in shelves in the hallway his favorite thing in the house. She wanted to tell them to be careful with the shelves, to be careful with the door frame in the master bedroom, because he had spent a full Saturday plumbing it perfectly when she was 8 and would never forgive a careless drill. She did not say anything. She got in her car and she drove. She did not know where she was driving, except she did. She just had not admitted it to herself yet. The business was restructured under Lucian's name within 2 weeks. He kept some of the heavy equipment, sold the rest. Contracts transferred. Conrad's 3 longtime workers were let go, men who had spent their careers learning the trade alongside her father, who knew how he liked a corner finished and a joist set. Lucian let them go with a handshake and 2 weeks of pay. He brought in cheaper crews. The savings account was split between Lucian and Marshall, Linnea's share, which she was told came to just over $6,000 after legal fees, never arrived. Lucian said the costs ran higher than expected. It will come, he said. It did not come. By the end of October, Linnea Hatchwell had a car with 140,000 miles on it, a suitcase of clothes, $310 in her checking account, and a deed to a property she had never seen. She had no plan. Her mother was dead since she was 3. Her brothers had made it clear that whatever family they had once been, it had ended with Conrad. She was 20 years old, and she was entirely on her own. The deed sat on her dashboard. 3.2 acres, a structure listed as single-family residential, unfinished, $400. She drove out on a Thursday morning. The sky was overcast. The air was cool for late October. The road out of town was cracked pavement that turned to gravel after the first mile. A few houses early on, set back behind fences, but they thinned fast. By the second mile, there was nothing but trees and empty mailboxes and the sound of tires on loose stone. She had looked the property up on the county assessor's website the night before. The listing was spare, unfinished residential structure, wood frame partial construction, no photograph, no description. The road ended at a gate. Beyond the gate, 3 acres of tall weeds and silence. A gravel path mostly swallowed by grass led toward a structure about 100 yards back from the road, the house. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Bare plywood walls, no siding, no paint. The porch had no railing. One front window was covered with plastic that snapped in the wind. A small wooden ladder leaned against the south side, rust on the rungs. $400. That was what the county thought this place was worth. Linnea sat in her car for a long time. She thought about the house she had grown up in, about the strangers inside it now, about the workshop in the garage where Conrad had kept his tools, the ones Lucien had probably sold without even opening the cases, about her father at his desk every evening, pencil behind his ear, going over plans. She thought about how, in 20 years of life, she had never once seen her father take a shortcut on anything. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no texts, nothing from either brother since the last paper was signed. She got out. She walked through the weeds. She stepped onto the porch. The boards held. They were more than solid, level, tight, the joints clean, built the way her father would have built them, because of course they were. She put her hand on the front door. It was heavier than she expected. Solid wood, not hollow core. She pushed. The door opened without a sound. The hinges did not squeak. Someone had oiled them. Recently, the oil had not even dried fully. She stepped inside, and she stopped, one hand still on the door frame, because the inside of this house had nothing to do with the outside. The interior was finished, not in the rough, half-done way the exterior suggested. Finished, with care, with intention, with a level of craftsmanship Linnea had only seen once before in her entire life, on the best job her father had ever run. Timber framing lined the walls, hand-joined at every corner. No nails, no metal brackets, mortise and tenon. The joints cut so tight she could not see daylight between them. A stone fireplace anchored the far wall. The stones were fitted and mortared with the patience of a man who did not care how long it took. The mantel was a single piece of black walnut, sanded, oiled, set level by hand. Built-in shelves ran along the east wall, oak, sanded smooth, unvarnished, the grain visible and straight. The shelves were not decorative, they were structural, fitted into the wall framing with dovetail joints, each one seated tight enough to hold weight without flexing. Dust covered everything, a thin gray layer on every surface, on the mantel, on the shelves, on the wide plank floor. But under the dust, the house was beautiful. She stepped inside, let the door close behind her, walked to the center of the main room. With one hand on her father's tape measure in her pocket, she looked at what he had done. Every joint was clean, every surface was level. The ceiling beams ran straight and parallel, the kind of precision that required more than a level and a square. It required hands that understood wood, that could feel when a board was true and when it was not. She walked through the room, running her fingers along the shelving. The wood was warm, oak that dense always was. She could feel the grain through her fingertips. The kitchen was at the back of the house, separated from the main room by a half wall with an open pass-through. The cabinets were hand-built. The countertop was a single slab of butcher block, sanded and oiled, the grain running the full length. No hardware on the cabinet doors. They hung on wooden hinges, carved to sit flush. Conrad had built this. Not his crew, not his workers, not a subcontractor. Conrad, alone, by hand, on a piece of land nobody in the family had known about, in a house the county valued at $400. A narrow staircase led up from the back of the main room. She climbed it. The treads did not creak. Each one sat flush against the stringers, the riser's uniform, the banisters smooth under her hand. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms. The larger had a window facing south, looking out over the property toward the neighboring land. A wooden bed frame stood against the wall, made from the same oak as the shelving downstairs. The mattress was bare, but the bed frame itself was a piece of furniture that belonged in a museum. The smaller bedroom was a workspace. A desk sat under the window, hand-built, drawers on both sides, the surface worn smooth by use. On the desk, centered, a journal, leather-bound, thick, the cover read, "For Linnea," in Conrad's handwriting. She sat down in the chair. She opened the journal. The first entry was the oldest. The pencil faded. The date on the page, years before his diagnosis. 3 lines written in the careful upright hand she knew from his sight notebooks. "I bought the lot today. Tax auction. Nobody else wanted it. $400 for the only honest thing I have owned since your mother died." She pressed her fingers against the page. She could hear his voice in the words, quiet, steady, certain. The same voice that had explained foundations and framing to a girl sitting on overturned buckets at job sites, asking questions the grown men never thought to ask. The next entry was longer. He described clearing the site, how he found the remains of an old farmhouse beneath the overgrowth. The concrete cracked, but the footprints still sound. He dug it out by hand, leveled the grade, poured new footings on a Saturday in November when the air was cold enough to keep the concrete from setting too fast. "Nobody knows about this place," he wrote. That is the point. The journal spanned hundreds of pages. Linnea could not read them all in one sitting, but she could not stop either. She turned through the entries in order, watching the house take shape across seasons. Through her father's handwriting, he had come every Saturday, left before dawn, told the boys he was checking on a rural project, driven 40 minutes to this lot with a truck bed full of lumber and tools. He had worked alone from sunrise until late afternoon, then driven home in time for dinner. The framing went up first. He described his technique in detail, and Linnea recognized the joints. Not modern construction, older than that. The kind that required wooden pegs and hand-cut tenons, and a patience that power tools made unnecessary. "My father taught me this," he wrote. He learned it in the old country from his father before him. They did not use nails because nails rust and wood shrinks around them. A proper joint holds tighter as the wood ages. The house gets stronger, not weaker. She had never met her grandfather. Aldwin Hatchwell had died before she was born. Conrad had mentioned him rarely, always with a reverence he showed for nothing else. She turned another page. Linnea is 11 now. She rides in the truck with me every Saturday morning and asks me where we are going. I tell her I have to check on a project. She does not ask whose project. She trusts me. One day I will bring her here, and I hope she understands why I kept it secret. The boys would want to sell it. They would see the lumber and the land and calculate a price. She will see the joints. Linnea closed her eyes. She sat on the desk chair with the journal in her lap, with the cold of late October coming in through the unfinished walls, and she pressed her hand against the page where her father had written about her at 11 years old, riding in his truck, trusting him. She did not know how long she sat there. She knew the light had changed by the time she stood up. She went downstairs, found the fireplace. A stack of split wood sat beside it, dry, seasoned, cut to uniform length by someone who knew how to season wood. She built a fire, paper at the bottom, kindling in a loose cone. two split logs on top with a gap between them for air. The match caught, the flames climbed, the room filled with a warm, shifting light that made the timber framing glow. She brought the journal downstairs, sat in front of the fire, kept reading by firelight. He wrote about winter, about wrapping the unfinished structure in tarps and working inside where the wind could not reach him, about the cold, numbing his hands until his grip slipped on the chisel, about the satisfaction of fitting a joint by lantern light while sleet tapped against the plywood walls. He wrote about a storm that blew a tarp loose, soaked the upstairs framing. He dried each beam with rags and a portable heater over the course of 2 weekends, checking the moisture content with a meter before sealing the wall. A patient man never builds a rotten house, he wrote. She slept on the floor that night, wrapped in a blanket from her car, the fire low, the journal beside her, the house cold but the walls holding out the wind, the sound of the fire, and the silence beyond it, settling around her until she fell asleep. She woke to the smell of chimney smoke. Not inside, outside. A knock on the front door. She sat up, disoriented. The fire had burned down to embers. Pale morning light was coming through the kitchen window. Another knock. She got up, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, walked to the door, opened it. An old woman stood on the porch, coat buttoned to her chin, a canvas bag hanging from her arm, short white hair, clear eyes behind thin glasses. The woman studied Linnea's face, then her expression changed. The concern softened into something else, something that went deeper than seeing a stranger. Recognition, not just recognition of resemblance, recognition of a continuation. You are his daughter. Yes. Hollis Brockway. I live on the next property. Linnea stared at her. You sent me the dress, she said. I sent you the dress. How did you know what size I wore? I asked the woman at the post office. She knows everyone's size, including yours. They stood there. The morning was cold and bright. The trees along the property line were bare. The sky above them was the hard blue of late October. Hollis adjusted the canvas bag on her arm. I saw the smoke last night. Nobody has been here since Conrad. How long have you known about this place? Since the beginning. Hollis looked past her into the house, at the fireplace with its low embers, at the timber framing, at the shelving. Your father built houses for other people his whole life, she said. This was the only one he ever built for himself. Linnea did not know what to say. Hollis was already moving past her into the kitchen, setting the canvas bag on the counter, pulling out things, bread, eggs, a jar of homemade jam, a thermos of coffee. She looked at the kitchen with the appraising eye of someone who understood practical things. No electricity. No running water. The pipes are in. Nothing is connected yet. The well on this lot is good, Hollis said. Deep enough for year-round. Your father had it tested. He drilled it himself the second year. She unscrewed the thermos, poured 2 cups, pushed one across the counter to Linnea. They drank coffee standing in the kitchen. Hollis talked. Not in a hurry, not filling silence, just talking. The way people who have lived alone a long time talk when they finally have someone to talk to. She told Linnea about the property, about the well Conrad had drilled in the 2nd season, about the septic he had installed himself because hiring someone would have meant someone else knowing. She talked about the house in the present tense, as if it were a living thing. He never rushed, Hollis said. Some Saturdays he would spend the whole day on one door frame. I would see him standing back from it, just looking, not moving, for 10 minutes at a stretch. Then he would step in and make one adjustment and step back again. That sounds like him. He brought me vegetables from the garden in town. Never asked for anything in return. One winter, the pipes in my kitchen froze. I mentioned it in passing. The next Saturday, he was under my house with a heat gun and foam insulation, would not take $1. He was like that with everyone. No, Hollis said, not everyone. With the people he cared about. She looked at Linnea over the rim of her coffee cup. You did not know about any of this, did you? No. He thought you were not ready. He was waiting until you finished school. He said, she will know when. He used those exact words. Linnea set the coffee down because her hand had started shaking. She walked to the front window, looked out across the property. The morning sun was hitting the tops of the trees. The grass was still wet from the night before. Hollis came over and stood beside her. I want you to know something, Hollis said, and I do not say things like this lightly, so you listen to me. Are you listening? Yes. You are not alone here. You think you are. You are not. Linnea did not turn her head. She could not, because if she turned her head and looked at this small, white-haired woman with the clear eyes and the canvas bag of food, then she was going to break in a way she could not afford to break yet. So she kept looking at the trees, and she said, Thank you. Hollis put a hand on her shoulder, briefly, like a punctuation mark, then took it away. I am going home now, she said. I will come back this afternoon. We will eat. You will tell me what you need. I will know who to call to get the power turned on. And you will sleep in a bed tonight instead of on the floor. Hollis. Yes. How did you know I slept on the floor? Because there is no mattress in the upstairs bedroom yet. I check from the road sometimes. She picked up her thermos, walked to the door. She paused at the threshold, looked back, the morning light catching the side of her face. He said one more thing, Hollis said, about you. The last Saturday he was strong enough to be here. He said she is going to find something I left for her, in an envelope, sealed with wax. She is not to open it for 30 days. You make sure she knows that. Linnea felt the envelope, in her purse, on the kitchen counter, even from across the room. He said, Tell her the first 29 days are the hardest. After that, she will be all right. Hollis opened the door. The cold came in. Today is day 11, child. She stepped out onto the porch. The door closed behind her, and Linnea stood at the window, watching an old woman she had never met until this morning walk down a gravel path toward a property next to her own, with a canvas bag on her arm and a sky like polished glass above her. She put her hand against the cold pane. The Stanley pressed against her thigh from the back pocket of her jeans. 18 days to go. The basement door was under the staircase. Linnea had not noticed it the night before, because the night before she had been reading a dead man's handwriting by firelight and crying without crying, and she had not had eyes for doors. But the morning was different. The morning had Hollis Brockway in it, and coffee, and bread, and a thermos, and the small certainty of an old woman who had said, You are not alone here. So Linnea ate the bread, drank the coffee, looked around the house in daylight for the first time, and found the door. It was narrow, recessed into the paneling, almost hidden, a wooden knob, hand-carved, the size of a walnut. She turned it. The door opened onto a set of concrete steps. Going down, she stood at the top, looking into the dark. There would be a light. Of course there would be a light. Conrad had set up the property to be inhabited eventually. There had to be a switch somewhere. She felt along the wall. There, a switch, old style, brass. She flipped it. Nothing. Right. No electricity yet. She went back to the kitchen, got the flashlight from her car, came back, turned it on. She went down. The basement was smaller than the rooms above, low-ceilinged, lit by two narrow windows set at ground level. Pale October light came through them, filtered through grass and dust. It was the most carefully organized space Linnea had ever seen in her life. Tools lined the walls, not power tools, hand tools, planes, chisels, marking gauges, dovetail saws, wooden mallets, squares and bevels and sliding T-rules. Each one hung from a dedicated peg, each one cleaned and oiled, each one stamped on the handle with two initials, A. H. Aldwin Hatchwell, her grandfather, the tool she had never seen in her life because her grandfather had died before she was born, and her father had never brought these out, not once, not at the workshop in town, not in the garage at the childhood house. She lifted a smoothing plane from its peg, turned it in her hands. It was heavy, balanced, the sole flat and true. She ran her thumb across the blade. The blade caught against her skin, sharp enough to shave, a tool her grandfather had held, maintained, sharpened, by a man she had never met, in a country she had never seen, and her father had kept it, sharp, for 60 years. She set the plane back on its peg, carefully, the way Conrad would have. A workbench ran along the far wall, smaller than the one she had glimpsed upstairs. On it, a stack of notebooks. She opened the first one, her father's handwriting. Different from the journal, different in purpose. These were not entries. These were technique manuals, drawings of joints, annotated with dimensions, notes on grain direction and glue type, cross sections of wall framing showing how traditional construction handled load differently than modern building, diagrams of staircases and mantels and window casements, each drawn with the draftsmanship of a man who had learned to build before software replaced pencil and paper. She turned the pages, slowly, because she was beginning to understand Conrad had not just built a house here. He had built a record, a curriculum almost, a course in building by hand, written for someone who would come after him, who would want to learn, written for her. She sat on the workshop floor with the notebooks around her, the flashlight propped against a sawhorse pointing at the ceiling so the room glowed indirectly. The concrete was cold under her. She read the first notebook cover to cover, then the second, then the third. Then she sat very still, and she said, out loud, to the empty workshop, to her grandfather's tools, to the air, she said, Daddy, just the one word, nothing else. The afternoon light came back through the narrow basement windows and shifted across the floor. Hollis came back at 4. She had a casserole dish balanced on one hand and a small bag in the other. She walked in without knocking, set the dish on the counter, opened the oven, saw there was no power, set the dish on the stovetop instead. We will eat it cold. What is it? Chicken and noodles, my mother's recipe. Yours now too if you want. Linnea wanted to cry again. She did not. She set out 2 plates. Hollis pulled a candle out of her bag, lit it, put it between them. They ate. Hollis talked about the power company, the woman who scheduled appointments, the number to call, the deposit Linnea would need, about $180. Hollis said it like it was nothing, like everyone had $180 sitting in a checking account. Linnea did not have $180 sitting in a checking account. She had $310 total for the whole month. She did not say this. Hollis kept talking. Erlon Rakestraw is going to want to see you, she said. Who? The man at the hardware store. On Main, he has known your father since before you were born. He told me to tell you to come by when you were ready. Not before, but not later than next week. What does he want? Hollis chewed a noodle, swallowed, looked at Linnea over the candle. He did not say, but I have known Erlon for 40 years, and when Erlon says, tell her to come by, it is not a small thing. Linnea pushed the noodles around her plate. She was not hungry. She was full of something else, something that did not have a name. Sitting in the basement workshop all day had filled her with it. The notebooks, the tools, the pencil drawings, a man who had loved her so much that he had built her a school in a building nobody else knew existed. The next morning she drove into town. The hardware store was on Main, a flat-roofed building, gravel lot, hand-painted sign that read, Rakestraw Building Supply, in letters that had been touched up so many times. They were thicker than they had been when they were new. She had never been inside. Her father had always gone himself. She pushed the door open. The bell over the door rang. The smell hit her first. Sawdust and oil and old paper. The smell of every job site memory she had. The man behind the counter was in his 60s, broad across the shoulders, hands that had spent a lifetime holding tools. He looked up. He did not say hello. He did not say, can I help you? He just looked. His eyes moved across her face, down to the Stanley tape measure clipped to her back pocket, then back to her face. You are Conrad's girl. Yes. I heard about what happened. I am sorry. She nodded. She did not trust her voice. He came out from behind the counter. He was tall, taller than her father had been. He moved slowly, like a man whose knees were not what they used to be. Come back here, he said. I want to show you something. She followed him to the counter. He pulled out a ledger from under it, old-fashioned, cloth-covered, lined pages, the kind of book that had not been in common use for 40 years. He opened it to a page near the back, turned it around so she could read it. Your father opened an account here, he said, paid into it a little at a time, started 6 years ago. He said his daughter would be in one day, said when she came in alone, and had been in enough times to know my floor, to let her have it. Linnea looked at the page, date after date, small deposits, $25, $40, $60, once $100, spread across 6 years of Saturdays. At the bottom, the balance, $3,240. She looked up at Erlon Rakestraw. She tried to say something. Nothing came out. He set the rule himself, Erlon said. He said, Erlon, she is going to walk through your door and pretend she is just buying supplies. She is going to come 3 times, 5 times, maybe 10, until she stops walking like a guest and starts walking like she owns the place. Then you tell her, not before. This is the first time I have come in. I know. You are telling me anyway. I am telling you anyway, because he is gone, and the rule was for him, and he is not here to enforce it, and I think he would forgive me for breaking it once, for you. She put both hands on the counter, because she needed to put her hands on something. Erlon turned the ledger back around, wrote a note in the bottom margin, date, time, notified, signed his name. You will need supplies, he said, for that house, for your hands, for the winter. You come in, you take what you need, I subtract it. We do this until the money runs out, then we do it some other way. Do you understand? Yes. Say it back to me. I will come in. I will take what I need. You will subtract it. Good. Now go home. Come back next week with a list. Do not say thank you. He would not have wanted that. He would have said you were thanking the wrong person. She did not say thank you. She walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. and then she let go, and then she did it again. She did not cry until she was 3 blocks down the road, and then she had to pull over at a gas station and put her forehead against the steering wheel and shake for a while until she could see again, which was the second time in 4 days she had cried at a gas station. She drove back to the property, made tea, sat in front of the cold fireplace, watched the light change. She had not been able to read more of the journal since the workshop discovery, because the journal had become almost too much. But that night she made herself read another entry. Conrad was writing about Lucien. Lucien changed the lumber supplier last month. Did not tell me until the delivery showed up at the Redmond site. The boards were lighter, cheaper grade. I pulled 3 from the stack and checked the moisture content. Too high, the grain was loose. I could see the pith in 2 of them. I told Lucien. He said the old supplier was overcharging. The handwriting tightened. She could see the pencil pressed harder into the page. I asked him when price became more important than the product. He looked at me and said, "Nobody cares about quality, Dad. They care about price." The next page. I have been building for more than 30 years. I have never once delivered a wall I would not lean my own weight against. I have never poured a foundation I would not stand on in a storm. Lucien does not understand what that means. He sees the business as a spreadsheet, inputs and outputs. He does not see that a house is someone's life. Their children sleep under the roof you frame. Their family grows old inside the walls you raise. She turned another page. The work you do today has to be standing when you are gone, and standing right. She closed the journal. She sat with it on her lap, watching the embers of the fire shift and resettle, and she thought about her brother, the brother she had grown up with, the one who had taught her how to ride a bike when she was 6, the one who had been kind to her once, a long time ago, before he started wearing ties. She did not know when the kindness had ended, or maybe it had never been there. Maybe she had just wanted to remember it that way. The knock came on a Wednesday morning. She was in the workshop, sharpening a chisel, following the diagram in one of Conrad's notebooks, the one labeled Sharpening Step 1, pressing the bevel against an oil stone at 25 degrees and pulling it back and forth in a steady rhythm. The knock came from upstairs. 3 quick raps. Pause. 1 more. A pattern. She set the chisel down, climbed the stairs, crossed the front room, opened the door. A young man stood on the porch, mid-20s, maybe 26, lean, long arms, a canvas jacket, work pants, boots that had seen real use, a toolbox in his right hand, not new, old, inherited probably, or bought used many years ago. He had brown hair, brown eyes, a face she had never seen. He looked at her. He did not look like a stranger. He looked like a stranger who already knew her. "I am sorry," he said. "For what?" I did not know he had passed. Her stomach dropped. "Who are you?" He set the toolbox down, slowly, like he did not want her to think he was making a sudden movement. "My name is Ezekiel Pomfret. I worked with your father, not for the company, not officially. He was teaching me." She stared at him. "Teaching you what?" "Everything." She did not say anything. He did not push. He waited. The wind moved through the dry weeds at the edge of the porch. A crow called somewhere over the tree line. The morning was cold. He was not wearing gloves. His hands looked like hands that had spent a lot of time outdoors. She said, "How long?" 4 years. 4 years. Yes. Why did I never know? He did not want anyone to know. He said, not the boys, not anyone in town, not even you, not until. Not until what? Not until he was gone. He said you would understand when the time came. She stepped back from the door. She did not invite him in. She also did not close the door. He stayed on the porch. He picked his toolbox back up. I can leave, he said. If you want. I came because I heard, last week, from a man at the lumber yard. I drove out twice and turned around at the gate both times because I did not know what I was supposed to do, and today I decided I had to at least say it, so I said it. Say what? That I am sorry, and that whatever you need, I am here. If you do not want me, I leave, right now. I never come back. That is also fine, he used to say. Linnea makes her own decisions. Do not try to make them for her. He looked at the ground. Those were his words. Linnea felt the porch boards under her feet, the same boards her father had built, level and tight, the same boards that had held her weight the first time she stepped onto them 10 days ago. She thought about a man who had lied to his sons for 10 years about where he went on Saturdays, and who had taken on this young man quietly, patiently, Saturday after Saturday, because his sons would not learn what he had to teach, because they would not even pick up a hammer. She thought about how alone her father must have been, and how he had refused to stay alone. He had made a son where his sons would not be. She stepped back into the doorway. Come in, she said. He picked up the toolbox. He came in. He stopped in the middle of the front room, looked at the fireplace, the shelves, the framing, like a man looking at his own work. You worked on this house. Yes. How much? The shelving, the mantelpiece, the 2 windows on the south wall. The south wall windows are perfect. He taught me they are perfect. He was a good teacher. She walked to the kitchen, poured coffee, put it in front of him. He sat at the small table she had moved into the kitchen from the upstairs workspace. He held the mug with both hands, like a man warming himself. He told her things she did not know. He told her how Conrad had met him 3 years ago at the lumber yard. Ezekiel had been 22 then. He had been working as a day laborer for Lucian, on a job that had something wrong with it. The concrete delivery did not match the spec on the contract. Ezekiel had asked Lucian about it. Lucian had fired him 3 days later. Ezekiel had been at the lumber yard, looking at red oak boards he could not afford, and a man he did not know had walked up beside him, started talking about grain direction, about how oak from the Ozarks was different from oak from the Appalachians, about how to read a board with your hand before you cut it. The man had been Conrad. He had asked Ezekiel why he had been let go from Hatchwell. Ezekiel had told him. The concrete, the spec, the questions. Conrad had been quiet for a long time. Then Conrad had said, "Come to my truck. We are going somewhere." And he had driven Ezekiel out here, to this house. And he had said, "I am going to teach you once a week, on a day none of my sons know about. If you tell anyone, I stop. Do you understand?" Ezekiel had understood. 4 years, every Saturday, until Conrad had gotten sick, then once every 2 weeks, until once a month, then not at all. The last time Ezekiel had seen him was 8 months ago. Conrad had been in the upstairs workspace, sitting at the desk, too weak to stand at the bench. He had pressed a key into Ezekiel's hand, a small brass key, on a leather cord. Ezekiel pulled it out of his pocket now, set it on the kitchen table between them. He told me, if anything happens to me, Linnea will come to the house. She will sit in the basement workshop. She will find the locked drawer in the small desk down there. Give her the key. Then tell her this. Tell her your father knew you would do the right thing with whatever you find. He just could not do it himself. She looked at the key. She did not pick it up. She said, "What is in the drawer?" "I do not know. He never said. He never opened it in front of me." "You never looked." "It was not mine to look at." Of course, because Conrad had trusted him. And of course, Ezekiel had honored the trust because he was his father's student. She took the key. She did not go down to the basement right away. She let Ezekiel finish his coffee. She offered him bread and jam. He ate slowly, the way her father had eaten, chewing each bite for a long time, setting the bread down between bites. When he was done, she walked him to the door. He picked up his toolbox. He looked back at her once. "He talked about you all the time." He did. "All the time," he said. "Linnea sees the joints. The boys see the price tag. She is the one. She just does not know it yet." She closed the door. She stood with her back against it. She held the brass key in her right hand and the doorknob in her left. She did not move for a long time. Then she walked to the basement door, opened it, went down the steps. She went to the small desk in the corner. She had noticed the drawer the day before. She had assumed it held supplies, papers, receipts, maybe sandpaper. She had not tried to open it. Now she sat down on the floor in front of it, the way she had as a child, when her father had let her sort through his toolbox to teach her the names of things. She slid the key into the lock. The lock was small, brass, older than she was. She turned the key. It clicked. She pulled the drawer open. Inside, a manila folder, thick, almost 2 inches. The tab labeled in Conrad's handwriting, Hatchwell Construction, underlined twice. She lifted it out, set it on the workbench above her, pulled herself up to a standing position, opened the folder. The first page, a photograph, a concrete pour on a job site, annotated in pencil, 2 columns of numbers along the right margin, contract specifications on the left, actual materials delivered on the right. They did not match. She turned the page. Another photograph, another job site, another set of numbers, another gap between what was promised and what was delivered. She turned another page. Another. She kept turning. 23 photographs, each one a job site, each one documented with the thoroughness of a man who had spent his career reading building codes and knew exactly what a violation looked like. The first 16 pages were jobs she did not recognize. A strip mall on the highway, a warehouse near the rail yard, a medical building on Route 9, a storage facility outside the city limits. In every case, the concrete grade was lower than what the contract had specified. The rebar was thinner, or spaced wider than the plans required. Lucian had been swapping in cheaper materials for years and pocketing the difference, and Conrad had found the invoices and photographed the sites. But the last 7 pages were different. The last 7 pages were about a school, the new wing of the elementary school, Walden Creek Elementary, the biggest contract Hatchwell Construction had ever landed. Lucian had put the bid together himself. Back when Conrad had first started getting sick, he had won by coming in 20% below the next lowest offer. Conrad's notes explained how. The concrete was 2 grades below specification. The rebar was a narrower gauge, spaced at 16 inches instead of 12. The compression tests, which should have been performed by an independent lab, had been signed off by a cousin of Lucian's wife, who worked for the county inspection office. Linnea read. She read every page. She turned them slowly. Her hands were steady. She did not know why her hands were steady. She thought they should be shaking, because her insides were shaking. But her hands were not. Her hands were doing what her father's hands had always done. They were holding the evidence. They were turning it page by page. On the last page of the school section, Conrad had written a note, not to the county, not to a lawyer, to himself. I wanted to stop them. I wanted to call the county and tell them what my sons had done. But they are my sons. God help me. They are my sons. I could not make that call, so I'm writing it down. All of it, everything I have seen, and I am putting it here where it will be safe. If something goes wrong, someone will find it, and if nothing goes wrong, then maybe the building holds, and nobody gets hurt, and I can live with what I did not do. She sat down on the basement floor. She held the folder in her lap. She stared at the wall. She did not move for a long time. Her father had known, for months, maybe longer. He had known that his sons were building things that could fail. He had documented it. He had organized it. He had locked it in a drawer. He had given the key to a young man he had trained in secret, but he had not picked up the phone. He could not. He had been afraid of what would happen to them, afraid of what it would say about him, that he had raised two sons who would do this, afraid that if he turned them in, he would lose the only family he had left. She understood it. She wished she did not understand it, but she did. She closed the folder, put it back in the drawer, locked the drawer, put the key in her pocket. She did not say anything out loud. She went upstairs. She stood at the kitchen sink. She turned on the water that did not run, caught herself, turned the tap off, stood there, looking at her own hands. Day 27, 3 more days. She slept hard that night, no dreams, or none she remembered. She woke up at 6, made coffee on the camp stove Ezekiel had left her, started a fire, worked in the workshop, sharpened tools, followed the notebooks. She did not look at the folder. She did not need to. It was not going anywhere. Day 28, she worked the property, cleared brush near the south side, found old stakes Conrad had driven into the ground years before, a planned garden bed. She did not have time to plant anything, but she pulled the weeds anyway, because pulling weeds was a thing her hands could do. Day 29. Hollis came over for dinner. They ate stew. Hollis had brought potatoes from her cellar. They ate by candlelight again, even though the power had been turned on the day before, because Hollis had said, "The light from a candle is honest. Electric light tells little lies." Hollis asked her about the workshop, the notebooks. Linnea told her. Hollis listened without interrupting, the way Conrad had listened, the way Erlon had listened. She did not tell Hollis about the folder. She would, eventually, but not yet. Day 30. She woke before dawn. She made coffee. She stood at the front window. She watched the sun come up over the tree line. She went to her purse, pulled out the envelope, the wax seal, a circle of dark red wax, pressed with the head of a framing nail. She broke the seal with her thumbnail. She opened the envelope. Inside, a folded letter, a small brass key, larger than the one to the drawer, with a number stamped on the bow, 117. She unfolded the letter. Linnea, if you are reading this, 30 days have passed since I died. I am sorry I could not say goodbye more than I did. I am sorry I left you with what I am about to leave you with. By now, you have found the folder in the basement. You have read what is inside. You know what your brother has done. You know what your other brother has not stopped him from doing. I want you to know that I do not write this to bind you. I am not asking you to do anything. I am only asking you to know what I knew, to have what I had, because what I had I could not act on, and maybe you can, and maybe you cannot, and either choice is the right choice, because it is yours. The key in this envelope is for Box 117 at Mercer Savings, the bank where I have done business for 40 years. There is one more thing in that box. I did not put it in this envelope because I wanted you to come into the world a little before you saw it, to breathe air, to eat bread, to stand on a porch you own. Take your time. The box is not going anywhere, but it is yours when you are ready. And whatever you decide, I am proud of you. I have always been proud of you. From the day you climbed onto an overturned bucket at the Redmond site at 5 years old and asked me what plum meant, I have been proud. I love you, Daddy. She read it twice. Then she folded it again, put it back in the envelope. She drove to Mercer Savings. She presented the key, showed her ID, signed the book. The bank officer led her to the vault, opened the outer door of the box, left her alone. She opened the box. Inside, one folder, thinner than the one in the basement, maybe 10 pages. She lifted it out, sat down at the small table in the vault room, opened it. The first page was a document, 3 pages, legal language, stamped and notarized, dated 3 months before Conrad had died. A trust amendment. Conrad had moved 40% of his ownership stake in Hatchwell Construction into a trust. The beneficiary of the trust was Linnea Hatchwell. The trust would activate automatically if construction fraud was officially documented in any project completed under the Hatchwell Construction name within the previous 5 years. The trust had been registered with the Secretary of State. It had been filed quietly. Tristan Vance did not know it existed. Lucian did not know it existed. Marshall did not know it existed. The lawyer who had drafted it was a man in another county, a man Conrad had hired specifically for this purpose, whose name Linnea did not recognize. The second document was a letter from the lawyer confirming that the trust was valid, that the language was airtight, that if Linnea ever needed to exercise it, she should contact him at the number provided. The third document was simpler, a handwritten note from her father. I gave them their inheritance, Linnea, the same inheritance I gave you, 3 equal shares, as I always said I would, but I also gave myself something. I gave myself a way to be a good man, even after I was gone. The trust does not punish them for being who they are. The trust only activates if they have done what I am afraid they have done. If they have built fairly, the trust never opens. If they have not, then it is yours, and you decide what to do with it. I trust you to decide. She closed the folder. She put it back in the box. She put the box back in the wall. She walked out of the bank. She drove back to the property. She sat on the porch. She watched the afternoon light cross the gravel path. She did not cry. She had passed crying. She had arrived somewhere else. The radio was on Sunday night. She was in the kitchen heating soup. Hollis was coming over. The radio was an old one Hollis had brought, a wooden box with a single speaker. The local AM station had a weekend news roundup at 7. The voice was bored, reading items off a clipboard. A routine maintenance inspection at Walden Creek Elementary School has identified cracks in the south wing. The wing was completed less than 2 years ago by a local contractor. As a precaution, classes are being relocated to the gymnasium while a structural engineer assesses the situation. Officials say there is no immediate cause for alarm. She set the spoon down. She turned the radio off. She stood at the counter. She put both hands flat on the wood. She breathed in, out, until she could hear her own breath again, until the kitchen came back into focus. 230 children, 5 days a week, in a building that her brother had built wrong. She knew the cracks from her father's photographs. She had seen them coming before they had appeared. She did not eat dinner that night. She drank water. She went to bed. She did not sleep. She lay in the dark with her eyes open, and she thought about her father. She thought about him sitting in his desk chair at the childhood house, pencil behind his ear, going over plans, the way he had every evening of her entire life. She thought about him at job sites, the way he would lean against his truck after a long day and watch the sun set behind a wall he had finished framing that afternoon. She thought about him holding her mother's hand at the hospital when Linnea was 3. She had been told this story by Erlen Rakestraw once, about how Conrad had not left his wife's bedside for the entire 2 days she had been in intensive care. He had held her hand even after she stopped breathing. He had held it for another hour, just to make sure she was warm when she left. She thought about him in the workshop downstairs, holding Aldwin's plane in his own father's hand, teaching Ezekiel how to set a blade. She thought about him at the kitchen table the morning of her 16th birthday, sliding a small box across the table to her. Inside the box, a yellow Stanley tape measure. New. Now you have your own, he had said. She thought about him pressing the same tape measure back into her hand 40 days ago. You will know when. She thought about him. She thought about him. And at some point, past midnight, the thinking became something else, something quieter, something more certain. The cracks in that wall were not going to stop. She drove to the school the next morning. She did not bring the folder. She did not have to. She wanted to see it. She wanted to look at the building, to remember what was at stake. She parked across the street. She sat in her car for 40 minutes. She watched parents drop their children off. Most of them were being directed around the south wing to a temporary entrance through the gymnasium. There were 2 parent volunteers wearing reflective vests, helping with the rerouting. The children did not seem worried. They were 5 and 6 and 8 years old. They were carrying lunch boxes, talking to friends, going to school. A little girl with red hair held her mother's hand, skipping a little. Her ponytail bounced. Linnea did not know her, but Linnea knew that ponytail. Marigold's hair was that color. 230 children. She drove home. She made tea. She sat on the porch with the tea. She watched the trees. A car pulled into her gate at 4 in the afternoon. She did not recognize it. For a moment she thought it might be Lucian, but the car was a small silver sedan. Not Lucian's car. A woman got out. Coralie. Coralie had not been to this property. Coralie did not even know this property existed until last week, when Linnea had mentioned it on the phone. In passing, she walked up the path. She had something in her hand. Linnea stood up from the porch chair. Coralie was small, 5'3", soft brown hair in a low ponytail, jeans, a gray sweater, no makeup. Her face was pale. She climbed the porch steps. She held out the thing in her hand, a USB drive, black, plain. Marigold sleeps in a room at Walden Creek, Coralie said. I have not slept in 3 days. I keep thinking about it. She sleeps in that building 5 days a week. I drove past the south wing yesterday. I saw the cracks with my own eyes, and I came home and I told Marshall, you will tell her, or I will leave. Linnea did not say anything. Coralie held out the USB. He gave me this last night. It is everything. 2 years of emails, receipts, vendor lists, spec changes. He has been saving it for 2 years because he knew. She pushed the USB into Linnea's hand. He is too scared to come himself. He is sitting in our kitchen right now. He cannot drive. he cannot breathe, but he wanted you to have it before. Whatever you do next, he wanted you to have it. Linnea closed her fingers around the drive. She stared at it. And I wanted you to know, Coralie said. To know what? That you are not alone in this. That is all I came to say. The drive is one thing, but I also came to say, you are not alone. She stepped back, turned, started down the porch steps. Linnea said, Coralie. She stopped. Stay for dinner. Coralie looked at her, her eyes filled. She nodded. She came back up the porch. Hollis was already in the kitchen when they walked in. She had let herself in 20 minutes before. She had a pot of stew on the camp stove, bread on the counter. Ezekiel arrived 20 minutes later. He had been in the workshop. He had taken to coming most evenings to finish trim that Conrad had not finished because it felt right, because it was something to do with his hands. The four of them sat at the kitchen table. Hollis served. The stew was hot. The bread was warm. Coralie did not eat much, but she ate some. Ezekiel ate slowly. Hollis ate steadily. Linnea ate without tasting. Hollis bowed her head before the first bite. Lord, we thank you for this food, for the hands that prepared it, for the hands that built this table, for the man who is not at this table tonight, but whose work holds the walls around us. Amen. Coralie was crying quietly into her napkin. Linnea reached across the table, took Coralie's hand. Hollis took Linnea's other hand. Ezekiel sat with his hands folded in his lap, looking at the three of them, not knowing what to do. Hollis reached over and took his hand too. They sat that way for a moment, 4 people holding hands, around a kitchen table in a house that should not have existed, in the middle of a property that had been valued at $400. The fire in the front room popped once, then settled. Outside the windows, the sky was going from blue to violet to black. The candles on the table flickered, and in the pocket of Linnea's jeans, the USB drive sat warm against her hip, with 2 years of her brother's silence on it, 2 years that her other brother was finally going to break. She did not know yet what she was going to do with it. She did not have to know yet. She only had to eat the stew and hold the hands of the people at this table and let the night come down around the house. Tomorrow she would drive to the county inspector's office. Tomorrow she would carry the folder and the trust amendment and the USB. Tomorrow she would do the thing her father had not been able to do. But tonight she would eat. Tonight she would sit in the warm kitchen of a house her father had built for her. Tonight she was not alone. The county building inspector's office was downtown, 2nd floor, behind a door that read Department of Building and Safety. Linnea walked in carrying the folder under her arm, the trust amendment in a second folder, the USB drive in her front pocket where she could feel it, where she had to keep checking it was still there. The woman at the front desk asked if she had an appointment. No. Then I am afraid you will need to call and schedule one. This is about Walden Creek Elementary School. The receptionist looked up from her keyboard. She looked at Linnea's face, then at the folder, then back at Linnea's face. She picked up the phone. She did not call to schedule. She called somebody. 2 minutes later, a woman came out of the back office, mid-40s, short dark hair pulled back, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, khaki pants, a canvas jacket that said Quaid in red embroidered letters above the breast pocket. I am Marisol Quaid. I am the senior building inspector for this county. What do you have? Linnea did not waste words. My father documented material substitutions on multiple Hatchwell construction projects. including the south wing of Walden Creek Elementary. I have his records. I have his trust amendment confirming standing. I have 2 years of email backups from a second source. Will you look at them?" Marisol Quaid looked at her. She looked for a long second. She said, "Come back to my office." The office was small, cluttered, 2 windows, blueprints rolled and stacked against the wall, a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Mom" on the desk. Marisol shut the door behind them. She did not sit down. "Tell me your name first." "Linnea Hatchwell." "Hatchwell." "Yes." Marisol's face did not change, but something behind her eyes did. "Who was your father?" "Conrad Hatchwell." "I knew Conrad." "You knew him." "He built the south wing of the courthouse in Mercer in 1998. I was 24 years old. It was the first inspection I ever did. He walked me through every joint. He could have told me anything and I would have believed him. He told me the truth instead. I never forgot." Linnea did not say anything because her throat had closed. Marisol pulled out the chair across the desk. "Sit." Linnea sat. She placed the folder on the desk. She placed the second folder beside it. She placed the USB drive on top. Marisol sat down. She put on her reading glasses. She opened the first folder. She turned the first page. She did not speak for 10 minutes. She turned every page. She held 2 of the photographs up to the light from the window. She cross-referenced numbers between pages. She got up at one point and pulled a binder off a shelf and checked something against the contracts on file with the county. She came back, sat down again, kept reading. At the 12th minute, she looked up. "This signature on the compression test. My brother's wife's cousin. He works in this building. He works on the 3rd floor. Yes, he has been signing inspection sheets for 6 years. Yes. How many of those sheets do you think are accurate? I do not know." "I think I know." Marisol closed the folder. She set her reading glasses on the desk. She rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands, the way Linnea had seen her own father rub his eyes 1,000 times. "Miss Hatchwell." "Yes." "Do you know what you are doing?" "Yes." "Say it back to me." "I am turning in my brother for fraud and reckless endangerment of 230 children. Why?" "Because my father could not." Marisol nodded, slowly, once. She reached for the phone on her desk. She made 2 calls. The first was to the county prosecutor. The second was to the state inspector general. Both calls were short. Both calls ended with Marisol saying, "I will hand deliver the originals within the hour." She hung up. She looked at Linnea. "The south wing is closing tonight. Tonight. Tonight, before the morning bell. We will pull the kids before sunrise." "Okay." "You will need to be available for follow-up interviews. We will need depositions. The county will subpoena the original folder. I am keeping the originals in my office safe tonight. I am not letting them out of my sight until they are in a vault at the prosecutor's office tomorrow morning. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Go home. Eat dinner. Sleep if you can. I will call you in the morning." Linnea stood up. She held out her hand. Marisol stood up too, took it, held it, did not let go right away. "He was a good man," Marisol said. "Your father. He was. You are doing this for him. I am doing this for the children." "Yes," Marisol said, "but you are also doing it for him." She let go of Linnea's hand. Linnea walked out of the office, down the stairs, out the front doors, across the parking lot to her car. She sat behind the wheel. She did not start the engine. She put her forehead on the steering wheel. And for the first time in 3 weeks, she did not cry. She exhaled, slowly. For the first time in 3 weeks, because her father had been right. She had been the one all along. She just had not known it yet. The school closed at 4 in the morning, floodlights in the parking lot, 2 unmarked vans, 3 county trucks, Marisol Quaid in a hard hat directing the team, crews carrying out desks, chairs, backpacks left behind on Friday afternoon, anything a child might come back for. By 7 a.m., local news vans were in the lot. By 8, the story was on the regional wire. By 10, phones in Hatchwell Construction's office were ringing and not being answered because Lucian had not come in, because Lucian had been at home since 6 in the morning with his lawyer Tristan Vance on the phone trying to understand what had happened. He found out it was Linnea by noon. He came to the property at 6 in the evening, just before dark. She heard the car from inside the workshop, tires on gravel, fast, the engine running high. He parked at the gate and walked up the path without slowing. She was on the porch when he came through the yard. She stood up. Lucien took the porch steps 2 at a time, stopped 3 feet from her. His face was white. His jaw was clenched. He was breathing through his nose, short, hard, trying to hold himself in. You went to the county? Yes. With Dad's folder? Yes. Do you have any idea what you have done? She did not answer. She let the question sit in the air. You have destroyed this family, Linnea. Everything Dad built. Everything I spent 10 years growing. You walked into a government office with a stack of paper and you tore it all apart. You tore it apart. What? You tore it apart when you put children in a building that could come down on them. That building was fine. The engineers say it was not. The engineers are covering themselves. The rebar was wrong, Lucian. The concrete was wrong. You knew, and you did it anyway, because the margins were better. He had no answer for that. He turned away. When he turned back, his eyes caught the interior of the house behind her. The front door was open. The lamp inside was lit. The light fell across the timber framing, the stone fireplace, the grain of the wood. He stared at it for a long breath. The anger left his face. She could see him seeing it. For the first time, she could not tell what was underneath the anger, whether it was shame or grief or the recognition of something he had lost before he ever knew he had it. Dad built this. Yes. He took half a step forward. He looked at the framing, the joints, the shelves. How long did this take him? 10 years. 10 years. Yes. Every Saturday. Yes. Why did he never tell me? Because you would have asked what it was worth. The anger came back. It came back because it was easier than what was underneath. She watched him reach for it, the way a drowning man reaches for a board. He should have stopped me, Lucian said. If he knew about the concrete, if he documented it, why did he not just stop me? Because you are his son. That is not an answer. Because turning in his own children would have broken something in him that he could not afford to break. So he wrote it all down, and he left it for the one person he trusted to do what he could not. Lucien stood there, his mouth open, then closed. He looked at the door of the house one more time, then he turned, walked down the porch steps, across the yard, through the gate, got into his car, sat with the engine off for a full minute, staring through the windshield at nothing, then started the car and drove away. Linnea sat down on the porch step. She put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She had not cried in a week, but she put her face in her hands, and she breathed the way Conrad had breathed in the last weeks, slow, like the breath itself took planning. A truck pulled into the gate 20 minutes later, headlights moving carefully over the gravel. Hollis came up the path first, slow, the way an older woman walks in the dark, with her cane out and her chin up. Coralie came behind her, Marigold's hand in her own. Marshall came last. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, did not come up. He looked at his sister. "I came to say I am sorry," he said. "Marshall, I knew. I am not going to pretend I did not know. I knew the spec. I knew the concrete. I knew the rebar. I told Lucien 3 times to fix it, and he said the margins were safe, and I let him say that because saying yes was easier, and my daughter sleeps in that building 5 days a week." He did not climb the steps. He stood at the bottom, looking up. "I have hired a lawyer this afternoon. I am going to cooperate fully with the prosecutor, with the inspector, with anyone who asks me anything. I am going to tell them everything I know. Whatever they decide to do with me, they can do." "Marshall, I do not want you to forgive me. I do not deserve that. I want you to know that I am doing the right thing now, even if it is 15 years too late." Linnea looked at her brother. She thought about the boy who had taught her how to ride a bike when she was 6. She thought about the man on his porch. She thought about the difference between them. She walked down the porch steps. She did not hug him. She put a hand on his shoulder, just once. Then she took it away. "Come inside," she said. "Hollis is going to make dinner. Coralie is here. Marigold is here. You are here. Come inside." He looked at her. He could not speak. He nodded. He came up the steps. She held the door for him. Marigold ran inside ahead of him, past the fireplace, up the stairs, calling for Hollis to come see the room with the bed in it, because Hollis had promised her she could see it. Marshall stood in the doorway, looking at the same fireplace Lucien had looked at 20 minutes before. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth. He looked at his sister. "He should have shown me this," he said. "He should have." "Why did he not?" "Because we did not earn it, Marshall. None of us did. He showed it to me because I came looking." He nodded. He stepped inside. She closed the door behind him. The next morning her phone rang at 6:15. It was Marisol Quaid. "The prosecutor is filing charges this week. Federal, fraud, and reckless endangerment. They are also charging your brother's wife's cousin on the 3rd floor. There will be more as we go through the rest of the Hatchwell projects." "Okay, you are not going to like the next part." "What?" "It is going to be loud. Reporters are going to call. Some of them already have. They are going to want to know your name. They are going to want pictures. They are going to want a story." "Okay, do not give them a story. Not yet. You let the prosecutor build the case first. Then if you want to talk, you talk, but not before. Okay? And Linnea, yes, your father would be very proud today." Linnea could not speak. Marisol let the silence be. Then she said, "I will call again tomorrow." She hung up. Linnea stood in the kitchen for a long time. She made coffee. She drank it. She watched the morning light come up over the trees. Then she got dressed, got her toolbox, went out to the front porch. The railing on the south side of the porch had a section where the spindles had not been finished. Conrad had set the bottom rail, but never the top rail. Ezekiel had said he would finish it, but they had not gotten to it. She finished it, by hand, with a hand drill, a chisel, a block plane, wood from the basement shop that Conrad had cut to size years ago and left ready. It took her 3 hours. When she was done, she stood back, looked at it, the way her father would have, from 10 feet away, not moving, just looking. She stepped in, made one adjustment, stepped back again. The railing was straight, the spindles were tight, the top rail was level. It was good work. It was the first piece of finished carpentry of her life. She sat on the porch step. She put her hands on her knees. She felt the wood under her thighs. And she said, out loud, to the empty yard, to the trees, to her father wherever he was, she said, I see the joints, Daddy. I see them. The news ran for 3 weeks. The school engineers confirmed everything in Conrad's folder. The concrete had been below specification. The rebar had been insufficient for the load the structure had been designed to carry. The foundation was already showing lateral movement the structure could not absorb. Left unaddressed, a heavy snowfall or a moderate earthquake could have triggered a partial collapse. 230 children had been in that building 5 days a week since it had opened. The story made the local news on Friday, the regional news by Saturday. A national wire picked it up Sunday morning. 20-year-old daughter turns in her own brother after cracks appear in elementary school wall. Reporters called the property. Linnea did not pick up. Reporters drove out to the gate. Linnea did not come out. Ezekiel handled them. He stood at the gate, polite, quiet, said the same thing every time. She is not giving interviews at this time. The county prosecutor is the contact for questions about the investigation. He said it 40 times in 3 days. Hollis brought food. Cora Lee brought Marigold. Twice a week, sometimes 3 times. Marigold made drawings at the kitchen table while the adults talked quietly. Marshall came on Saturdays. He did not know what to do with himself. He had quit Hatchwell Construction on the morning of the 2nd day. Lucien had not paid him for the month. He did not press it. He worked alongside Linnea in the workshop. He was not good with his hands. He had never developed the skill. He could carry lumber. He could hold a level. He could sweep sawdust at the end of the day. He did all of these things without complaint, Saturday after Saturday. Hollis received a letter on a Tuesday. Linnea was on the porch when Hollis came through the gate holding an envelope. Her face was strange, not happy, not sad, an expression Linnea had never seen on her before. My son wrote to me. Hollis sat down on the porch step. She held the envelope in both hands. She did not open it. He saw the story on the news about the girl who turned in her own family. He wanted to write because he was thinking about his own mother. What does it say? I have not opened it yet. Do you want me to read it with you? I want you to sit here while I read it. Linnea sat. Hollis opened the envelope, pulled out a single sheet of paper, unfolded it. She read it. Her face did not change. Then it did. She closed her eyes for a moment, opened them again. She handed the letter to Linnea. Linnea read it. It was short. Mom, I saw the news. I have been a coward. I have been a coward since I was 24. I am 54 now. I do not know if you want to hear from me. I would understand if you do not, but I would like to come see you, just once, if you will let me. There is a girl in another county who has done what I should have done 30 years ago, and I cannot live another day knowing she is braver than I have ever been. With love, your son. Linnea handed the letter back. Hollis folded it carefully. Put it back in the envelope. She did not cry. She looked at Linnea. Her eyes were clear behind her glasses. I waited 30 years, she said. 30 years. To have a reason to forgive him. And you just gave me one. Without knowing, you just gave me one. Linnea put her arm around Hollis's shoulders. The two of them sat on the porch. The afternoon light moved across the gravel path. A crow called from the tree line. Hollis leaned her head against Linnea's shoulder for half a minute. Then she sat up, patted Linnea's knee, said, Make tea, child. We will write him back tonight. The trust amendment activated on the 22nd day after Linnea filed the report with the county. Tristan Vance found out the next morning. He sat in his office staring at the document for a long time because he had been Lucian's lawyer for 6 years, and he had not known that the original Hatchwell Construction Trust had an amendment, or that the amendment was binding, or that 40% of the company had just transferred to a 20-year-old woman with a yellow tape measure. 40%. Lucian had owned 40%. Marshall had owned 20%. The remaining 40 had been in Conrad's name, held in the trust, now transferred. Lucian's 40% had not transferred, but the controlling stake was no longer his. The controlling stake was Linnea's. She could not vote her brother out. The legal proceedings would take care of that. But she could vote herself in. She did. She did not move into the old Hatchwell construction office downtown. She closed it. The building had been Lucian's redesign. The name on the sign had been Lucian's name, not Conrad's. She let the landlord take it back. She brought what she could use to the property. The old frame photograph of Conrad and his crew from their first big job in 1987 was in a box in the back of the office. Lucian had stuffed it there when he had taken down the original sign. She brought it home and rehung it in the workshop. Above the bench, she rehung the original sign too. Cedar, hand-painted, Hatchwell Construction, established 1987. She hung it on the gate post at the end of the gravel path. She did not have an office. She did not have a phone line. She did not have a website. She did not have a marketing plan. What she had was a workshop, a truck, a toolbox. Ezekiel, 2 of Conrad's old workers who had come back, Marshall on Saturdays, and Hollis with bread. It was enough. The first contract came in 3 weeks later. A man whose grandfather had hired Conrad in 1991 needed a barn rebuilt. He had heard about Linnea. He drove out to the gate one afternoon, sat in his truck for 10 minutes, then got out, walked up to the porch, knocked. She came to the door. He was in his 50s, calloused hands, tired eyes. "Your father built my grandfather's barn," he said. "It is still standing. The roof needs work. I want it done right. I will pay what it costs. I want you. I am 20 years old. I know how old you are. I read the paper. I have 1 full-time worker and 2 part-time. That is fine. It is going to take longer than a regular crew. I do not care." She quoted him a price. He did not negotiate. He wrote her a check for the deposit on her kitchen table. He signed it, slid it across to her. He looked at the timber framing in her front room. He shook his head. He said, "Your father was a hell of a man." He was. "I am going to leave now. You will start when you start. Take your time. The barn is not going anywhere." She took her time. She started the next Monday. Ezekiel led the framing. Linnea did the finish work. Marshall hauled lumber and held levels. The 2 of Conrad's old workers ran joist layout. They worked slow. They measured twice. They cut once. When the roof was done, the man stood in his pasture, looked at his barn, took off his hat, put it back on. He wrote her a check for the full amount, plus $1,000 extra. She tried to refuse the extra. He said, "You take it. That is what your father would have charged. He always undersold himself by $1,000. I was waiting for 30 years to pay him what he was actually worth. You let me pay it now." She took it. The next call came a week later, then another, then another. By spring, there was a waiting list. Hatchwell Construction was building again. Lucian's trial began in February. It was not quick. The federal prosecutors built the case carefully. They cross-referenced every photograph in Conrad's folder against the contracts on file. They subpoenaed the original concrete supplier. They subpoenaed the rebar vendor. They subpoenaed the inspection records. They charged Lucian with 17 counts of fraud, 3 counts of reckless endangerment, 1 count of bribery. The prosecutors said in their opening statement that they could have added more counts, but that these were the ones they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Lucian's lawyer, Tristan Vance, tried for a plea deal. The prosecutors said no. The trial took 6 weeks. Linnea testified once. She did not look at her brother while she spoke. She did not have to. She answered the question she was asked. She produced the folder. She produced the trust amendment. She produced the USB drive Cora Lee had given her. She did not cry on the stand. She did not raise her voice. She spoke the way her father had spoken, slow, clear, like every word mattered. The jury was out for 9 hours. They came back with a guilty verdict on every count. The sentencing was in April. The judge gave Lucian 6 years in federal prison, $1.8 million in restitution, permanent revocation of his contractor's license. Lucian did not look at Linnea when the sentence was read. He looked at the floor. His wife had already filed for divorce. His friends had stopped returning calls. His blue car had been sold. His house was on the market. He was walked out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He turned his head once before he reached the door. He looked at his sister. She did not know what was in his eyes. She did not know if there was apology in it, or anger, or just exhaustion. She nodded once. He looked away. He was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters surged toward Linnea. She did not stop. She walked past them with Marshall on one side and Coralie on the other. They got into the truck. They drove home. She did not cry on the drive. She did not cry that night. She did not cry the next day. But on Sunday morning, alone in the workshop, sharpening a chisel at the bench, she set the chisel down and she put her head down on her arms and she cried for an hour, the way she had not cried at the funeral, the way she had not cried in the lawyer's office, the way she had not cried at any of it. She cried for her brother, the brother she had once had, who had taught her to ride a bike when she was 6. She did not cry for the man he had become. She cried for the boy he had been before that. The new school wing broke ground in February. A different contractor, vetted by the state, proper concrete, proper rebar, independent inspections at every stage, posted publicly on the county website. The wing took 18 months to build. The ribbon cutting was on a Saturday in August. The next August, 18 months almost to the day from Conrad's funeral, Linnea was invited. She did not want to go. Marshall said she had to. Hollis said she had to. Coralie said she had to. And Marigold was going to be there. She was wearing the new dress Coralie had bought her. So Linnea went. She wore a simple navy dress. Hollis lent her a sweater because the morning was cool. She drove with Hollis. Marshall met them there. Coralie and Marigold came together. There were maybe 400 people in the parking lot. Folding chairs set up in rows. A small stage. A blue ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new wing. The mayor spoke first, then the superintendent, then the structural engineer who had supervised the rebuild. Each of them mentioned Linnea's name. Each of them said the words, "Thank you." She did not move from her chair. She sat in the third row with Hollis on one side and Marshall on the other. Marigold sat on Coralie's lap in the row in front of them. The little girl turned around every 2 minutes to wave at Linnea. Linnea waved back every time. Then the superintendent called Linnea up to cut the ribbon. She had not been told she would be cutting it. She froze. Marshall said, "Go on," Hollis said. "Go on, child." She got up. She walked up the steps to the stage. The superintendent handed her a pair of oversized scissors, the kind made for ribbon cuttings, comically large. She held them in both hands. She looked out at the crowd. She did not give a speech. She had not prepared one. She would not have given one if she had. She looked at the audience. She found a woman in the third row, a woman she did not know, holding a little boy on her hip. The little boy looked about 6. He had a backpack on already, like he was ready to go in the new wing right then. Linnea looked at the boy. The boy waved at her. She waved back. She turned. She lifted the scissors. She cut the ribbon. The crowd stood up. They clapped. They did not stop clapping for a long time. A woman came up to her afterward, older than Linnea, maybe Coralie's age. She was holding a little girl. The girl had red hair. The woman did not say anything at first. She just put her arms around Linnea. She held her for a long time. Then she stepped back. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She said, "Thank you for doing what none of us knew needed to be done." Linnea did not know how to respond. She nodded. The woman walked away. Marigold came running up, grabbed Linnea's hand, pulled her toward the playground. She let Marigold pull her. She let herself be pulled. The summer came in fully. The garden filled out. The rows of tomatoes climbed their stakes. The pepper plants flowered. The trees along the property line leafed out in deep green. The cedar siding on the house had weathered to a soft gray that made the building look like it had been standing for generations. Linnea woke before dawn most mornings. She made coffee in the kitchen her father had framed. In her grandfather's tools she had finished. She carried her mug out to the workshop. While the sky turned from black to gray to pale blue, she had a list of jobs, 3 on the calendar for the rest of the summer, 2 more for the fall. She kept the list in her father's handwriting, or rather, in handwriting she had taught herself to imitate. Block letters, pencil, the same way Conrad had kept his. On a Tuesday in late July, Hollis came over for breakfast. She had her son with her. His name was Wade. He was 54. He was a tall, thin man with his mother's eyes. He had driven down from upstate the week before. He had been at Hollis's house for 6 days, helping her replace the fence along the south line of her property. Hollis introduced him. Wade shook Linnea's hand. He looked at the house. He looked at the framing inside. He looked at the porch. She had finished by hand. He said, "My mother told me about you. Everything she told me was true." "What did she tell you?" "That you saved her son. Without knowing him, without ever meeting him, you saved her son." "I did not." "You did." "I just turned in my brother." "You did the thing that allowed me to turn around." You go through your whole life thinking, maybe one day, and then one day comes, and you have to decide whether you actually want it or whether it was just an idea. I read the news. I decided I actually wanted it. So I came. Hollis was watching her son. Her eyes were wet. "She has been waiting 30 years, Wade said. "I know." "You did not know. I know now." He nodded. "Thank you," he said. He said it plainly, the way her father would have said it, not loud, not dramatic, just plain. She nodded back. She poured the coffee. The 4 of them ate breakfast. Hollis, Wade, Linnea, and Coralie, who had come over because Marigold had a swimming lesson on Wednesday, and Coralie was dropping Marigold off at her grandmother's for the morning and stopping at the property afterward to deliver bread. They sat at the kitchen table. The light came through the windows. The Stanleys sat on the windowsill where Linnea had put it that morning when she came in for breakfast. Hollis said, "Do you ever think about what your father would say?" If he could see this, all the time, what do you think he would say? Linnea thought about it. She looked at the table, at the people around it, at the house her father had built, at the workshop visible through the window, at the gravel path leading to the gate, at the sky. She said, I think he would say, I told you so. Hollis laughed, Coralie laughed, Wade laughed quietly, the way his mother laughed. Linnea smiled. It was a small smile, but it was a real one, the first real one in a long time. She finished her coffee. She stood up. She tucked the Stanley into the back pocket of her jeans. She walked out of the kitchen and into the workshop. The early August light was coming through the workshop windows, hitting the sawdust on the workbench, turning it gold. Her grandfather's tools hung on the wall, each one in its place, each one cleaned and sharp and ready. Aldwin's hand plane sat on the shelf beside a photograph Linnea had found in the journal. Her grandfather as a young man, standing in front of a house he had built in the old country, squinting into the sun. She opened Conrad's journal to the last page. She had read the last page so many times by now that the paper was soft at the edges where her thumb had pressed. She read it one more time anyway. A house is not wood and nails, Linnea. A house is a promise. Build good ones. She closed the journal. She set it on the shelf beside Aldwin's photograph. Outside, a truck turned onto the gravel road. She heard the tires on loose stone, the engine slowing as it approached the gate. Ezekiel, then a second car behind him. Marshall, then a third. Coralie was already inside, so that was new, probably the framer they had hired for the new job starting Monday. She picked up a hand plane from the wall, the one Aldwin had stamped with his initials. She ran her thumb along the blade, sharp, true. She set it down. She walked to the workshop door. She stood there for a moment. The light came in around her, the smell of cedar and sawdust and coffee and Hollis's bread filled the air. Outside the door, voices were starting up, boots on gravel, a truck door slamming, someone laughing. Marigold's voice somewhere too. She had come back early. Linnea pulled the Stanley out of her back pocket, looked at it for a second, the yellow case worn smooth. She put it back. She tucked a pencil behind her ear. She walked out of the workshop and into the morning light. Her father had not been wrong. A house was a promise. She was going to spend the rest of her life keeping it.